I still remember the smell from one particular bale early in my career, a faint sourness underneath the usual sweet grass scent. The kind you only really notice once someone points it out and then can never quite unsmell again. The owner standing beside me had bought that particular bale 2 weeks earlier from a feed store she had trusted completely for years, stored it in a covered spot in her garage exactly the way she always had, and had no real reason at all to think anything about it had actually changed. I am Rue. I see small pets, and hay is the single largest part of a guinea pig's daily diet by volume, day after day, which makes it one of the easiest things to get quietly wrong, since a bag or a bale looking perfectly normal on the outside can be hiding a real problem just beneath the surface. Here is the mechanism behind why hay quality matters so much more than most owners expect. A guinea pig's digestive system depends on a steady, near-constant intake of fiber to keep everything moving properly, and hay is the primary source of that fiber for nearly every guinea pig kept as a pet. Poor quality, dusty, or contaminated hay does not just offer less nutritional value. It can actively introduce mold spores, sharp seed heads, or fine irritating dust directly into an animal that is going to be breathing above it, chewing through it, and resting on it for hours every single day. There is a second layer to this mechanism worth understanding too, and it matters just as much as the first one. Mold growth in stored hay often is not visible from the outside of a bag or a bale at all, since it tends to develop from the inside out wherever moisture got trapped during baling or storage, well before it ever reaches the outer layer a shopper actually sees and touches in the store. Here is where that hidden hay risk actually shows up in practice, worked through category by category. Number 1, any visible mold, clumps, or excess dust. Any hay showing visible white, gray, or black clumping, or an unusually dusty appearance when shaken, should be discarded entirely rather than picked through for the cleaner-looking sections. Mold spores spread through a batch far more thoroughly than the visible clumping alone suggests. Number 2, a sour or musty smell. Good quality hay smells sweet and grassy, close to fresh-cut grass. A sour, musty, or simply off smell, even a faint one, is one of the most reliable early warning signs of developing mold, often detectable before any visible clumping has formed at all. Number 3, unusual dampness to the touch. Hay that feels even slightly damp rather than dry and crisp has likely been stored somewhere with too much humidity, and that dampness is exactly the condition mold needs to establish itself, even if nothing looks wrong yet on the surface. Number 4, seed heads and awns. Certain grass hays carry sharp, barbed seed heads that can lodge in a guinea pig's mouth, cheek, or eye during normal eating. Checking a handful for an unusually high proportion of these barbed seed heads before buying a full bag is worth the extra minute it takes. Number 5, excessive stem thickness. Very coarse, thick-stemmed hay can be harder for some guinea pigs, particularly older ones or those with any dental sensitivity, to process comfortably. A mix of finer and coarser strands within the same batch generally serves a wider range of guinea pigs better than an unusually coarse, single-texture batch. Number 6, storage in a damp shed or garage. Hay stored somewhere with poor ventilation and higher humidity, even if it looked and smelled fine at purchase, can develop mold within the household after the fact. A dry, ventilated storage spot, off the ground rather than directly on concrete or a damp floor, matters just as much as the quality of the hay when it was first bought. Number 7, compressed bales versus loose hay for storage life. Compressed bales generally store longer and more predictably than loose bagged hay, since the tighter packing limits airflow and moisture exposure somewhat, though a compressed bale still needs the same dry, ventilated storage spot once opened and exposed to household air. Number 8, buying far more than can be used before it degrades. Hay does lose nutritional quality and freshness over time even under ideal storage conditions, typically within a few months of opening. Buying a smaller amount more often, even at a slightly higher per pound cost, often works out better than a large discounted bulk purchase that partially degrades before it is ever finished. Number 9. Cost cutting through unfamiliar or unlabeled sources. Hay bought loose from an unfamiliar source without any clear information about when or how it was cut and dried carries more uncertainty than a bagged product from an established small pet supplier, even though the bagged version typically costs somewhat more per pound. Number 10, mixing old and new hay in the same feeding area. Topping up a hay rack with fresh hay without removing what remains underneath allows older, more degraded hay to sit hidden beneath newer material, quietly building the exact damp, low airflow conditions mold needs right inside the enclosure itself, rather than only in storage. Number 11, hay rack design and airflow. A fully enclosed hay rack or box can trap moisture from a guinea pig's own breath and from ambient household humidity far more than an open rack design does, which matters more in more humid climates or during more humid seasons of the year. Number 12, Timothy hay as the general standard. Timothy hay is widely considered the standard staple hay for adult guinea pigs, specifically because of its fiber content and generally lower calcium level compared to some alternatives, though the freshness and storage principles on this list apply to it exactly the same as any other hay type. Number 13. Alfalfa hay's more limited specific role. Alfalfa hay runs notably higher in calcium and protein than Timothy, which makes it more appropriate for young growing guinea pigs or during specific life stages rather than as a general everyday staple for a typical adult, a distinction worth checking with your own vet if you are unsure which stage your guinea pig is currently in. Number 14. Orchard grass and other Timothy alternatives. Orchard grass and similar grass hays offer a reasonable alternative for a guinea pig that seems to prefer a different texture or scent, and rotating between a couple of acceptable grass hay types is a completely normal, low-risk practice many experienced keepers use. Number 15. The cost of switching hay types too abruptly. A sudden full switch from one hay type to another can occasionally upset a sensitive digestive system, so introducing a new hay type gradually alongside the current one over several days is a simple habit worth building regardless of which specific hay you land on. Number 16. Checking every new bag or bale, not just the first one from a new supplier. A supplier that provided excellent hay on your first purchase does not guarantee the same quality on every batch afterward, since hay quality depends heavily on that specific cutting, that specific season, and how that specific batch was dried and stored before it ever reached the store shelf. Number 17. The actual cost difference between good and poor quality hay over a year. A noticeably cheaper hay option is not automatically a better value once wastage from discarded moldy or dusty sections is factored in honestly. A modest few dollars extra per bag on a consistently reliable source often works out roughly even, or cheaper, than a bargain option that gets partially thrown away more often. Number 18. Hay is more than just food. Hay also serves as bedding material, environmental enrichment, and a dental wear surface all at once for most guinea pigs, which means a genuinely poor quality batch affects far more of daily life than the feeding bowl alone would suggest at first glance. Number 19. Reduced hay intake as an early warning sign worth tracking. A guinea pig eating noticeably less hay than usual, regardless of the reason, is one of the more reliable early signals that something needs attention, whether that turns out to be the hay itself or something else entirely, which is exactly why a same-day vet visit is the right call rather than waiting to see if appetite simply returns on its own. Number 20. Keeping a small reference sample. Keeping a small handful from each new hay batch in a sealed bag with the purchase date noted on it gives you something concrete to compare against if a later batch from the same source ever seems different, rather than relying purely on memory for what normal is supposed to look and smell like. Number 21. The difference between a subtle color change and actual spoilage. Hay naturally fades from bright green toward a more golden or straw color over time purely from light and air exposure, and that gradual fading alone does not mean the hay has gone bad. What matters far more than color is the combination of smell, dampness, and clumping already covered. So use those specific checks rather than color alone before deciding to discard a batch. Number 22. Feeding hay from an unfamiliar field edge or roadside source. Some owners with access to open land occasionally consider cutting their own hay or accepting a free bale from a neighbor's field. Hay from an uncontrolled source carries real uncertainty around pesticide exposure, unfamiliar plant species mixed in, and animal contamination that a commercial supplier's hay generally does not carry, so treat any free or homegrown source with real caution rather than assuming free automatically means safe. Number 23. The actual weight of what you are buying versus what the price suggests. Two bags priced similarly can contain meaningfully different actual weights of hay once compressed volume is accounted for. So checking the printed weight rather than judging purely by bag size or price alone gives a more honest sense of real cost per pound over a full month. Number 24. Seasonal availability and quality shifts. Hay quality and pricing both shift somewhat with the growing season in most regions, and a supplier that was excellent in one season is not automatically guaranteed to be equally good every single month of the year. Staying a little more alert around seasonal transition periods specifically is a reasonable habit rather than an overreaction. Number 25. Letting a guinea pig's own behavior guide part of the decision. A guinea pig that suddenly becomes noticeably more selective about a hay it previously ate readily is sometimes responding to a genuine quality change in that specific batch before a human ever consciously notices anything different about it, which makes a sudden shift in eating enthusiasm worth taking seriously rather than dismissing as pickiness alone. Here is what you can actually check tonight with whatever hay is currently in your home. Pull a generous handful from the middle of your current bag or bale, not just the top layer, and check it for smell, dampness, and any visible clumping using the specific signs covered above. Look at your actual storage spot honestly. If it is a garage, shed, or basement, check for dampness on the floor nearby and confirm the hay itself is elevated off any concrete or damp surface rather than sitting directly on it. Check the date you opened your current bag or bale if you noted it anywhere, and if you did not, start doing that going forward, since it turns a vague sense of freshness into an actual number you can act on with confidence. Watch your guinea pig's hay intake over the next couple of days specifically, rather than assuming a full hay rack automatically means normal eating, since a rack can look full while actual consumption has quietly dropped. Clean out your hay rack or box completely before refilling it, rather than simply topping the new hay on top of whatever remains underneath. This one small habit removes the exact hidden low airflow pocket where older material quietly degrades while looking perfectly fine from the outside, and it costs nothing beyond a moment of extra effort each time you refill it. If you buy in any real bulk to save money, split the bale into smaller, clearly dated portions as soon as you bring it home, keeping only a week or two worth accessible at a time and storing the rest somewhere genuinely dry and undisturbed. This reduces how much of the batch is exposed to household humidity and handling at any given time, which meaningfully slows the exact degradation this whole list is built around. I do want to mention something briefly, the way I would across my own exam table. I have put together a simple hay quality checklist covering exactly what to look, feel, and smell for at the store before you ever bring a bag home, along with proper storage guidance for a range of common household setups. It is linked below if that would help your own situation. None of this is meant to suggest hay is some fragile, endlessly difficult thing to get right, because for most ordinary households with a reliable source and reasonably dry storage, it genuinely is not. It is simply the one part of daily care easy to stop actively checking once a routine feels settled, precisely because it looks and feels the same from the outside whether that particular batch is genuinely fine or quietly starting to turn. The bale from that early memory got pulled from rotation the moment we traced the sourness back to it, and the owner switched suppliers not long after, this time asking directly about cutting and storage practices before buying anything in bulk again. She told me afterward she had never once thought to actually smell a bale critically before that day, since she had simply trusted that hay was hay, and that any bag sold for guinea pigs had already been checked for exactly that. None of this replaces your own vet, particularly if your guinea pig's appetite, stool, or energy has genuinely changed recently, however mild that change might currently seem. What a minute with your hand actually in the bag gives you instead is the chance to catch a problem before it ever reaches the cage, rather than working backward from a symptom trying to trace it to its actual source. It is also worth remembering that hay quality is not a one-time decision made back when you first chose a supplier. It is an ongoing habit, the same way checking an expiry date becomes automatic for your own groceries over time without ever feeling like a chore. The households that never run into a genuine hay-related problem are rarely the ones with access to some perfect unlimited source. They are simply the ones who kept checking, batch after batch, long after the initial excitement of a new guinea pig had settled into an ordinary daily routine. So tonight, reach into whatever hay you currently have on hand, not just at the surface, and really smell it, feel it, and look at it the way you would check any other food before serving it. It costs 1 minute, and for something making up most of what your guinea pig eats every single day, it is very often the highest value minute you spend on its care all week. If everything checks out fine, and for most households on most nights it genuinely will, that is a good result worth noting too, not just a formality to rush past. Knowing your current hay is genuinely clean gives you one less thing to quietly worry about, and it sets a clear baseline for what normal actually smells and feels like the next time you open a brand new bag from the same trusted source.